Every day, local government makes modern life possible. Water flows, roads are repaired, parks and playgrounds open and come to life. And behind each one of those services is a story of people who show up, care deeply, and lead with purpose, even when no one is watching. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and it's part of the HaltingWinter Project, a movement to restore pride, purpose, and participation in local government by sharing the stories that build belonging. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and every week I tell the stories that remind America where government really lives, locally, in our cities, our counties, and our communities. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to thank our founding sponsor, Tyler Technologies, a company that's been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998. From smarter budgeting to stronger resilience, Tyler Tech equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore practical resources and hear the real success stories from communities across the country at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. Tyler Technologies, empowering the public sector to build stronger, more connected communities. Now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Ben Lips, town manager in Cumberland, Indiana. Ben, welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks for having me on, Seth. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I know that it is cold in Indiana. I'm actually looking forward to being out in, Illinois, beginning of February, then Wisconsin, all cold places. Why can't I be speaking in Hawaii right now, right?
Right, right.
We're going to dive into not only your unique story, the front lines of Public Works, the big chair of town manager, but also just the impact Public Works has. I can't wait to always highlight them. Just, I think, the unsung heroes of a lot of towns and villages and cities. But before we get into your incredible professional career, we got to get to know you a little bit. Let's unpack the story. So take us back to the beginning, Ben. Tell us about where you were born and kind of the childhood that shaped you and raised you.
Sure. I was born in Greenfield, Indiana, which is just down the road from Cumberland, Indiana, just about 7 miles. So very close to where I am now and have been for a long time, as I'm sure we'll dig into. Raised in a household of 5 kids with my parents. So I'm the second youngest out of those 5. So a lot of older siblings beating up on me. My older brother, my 2 older sisters, and then have my younger sister. Kind of grew up going to church in the area around Greenfield. Then kind of worked my way up. My first jobs were working in food service, like I think a lot of people in high school. Some of my favorite jobs with my friends back then, a little bit more chaotic. Well, it's a different kind of chaos, I guess, when it's a bunch of high school boys working together. Then kind of went off to school, kind of part-time, working part-time, met my wife, who now we've been together 2 decades. We've also been together since we were 18, so I like to commit young and stay on that path. And now we have our 5-year-old son, and it's great time.
I love it. Let's dive into, as you're growing up, tell us about kind of the area you grew up in. How big was it? How aware were you of even, city hall, local government?
So Greenfield is a county seat for Hancock County, Indiana. It's the largest city within Hancock County, but it's still it was a very much rural county at the time. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the state now, but kind of what you expect in small town America. It's on the national highway, US 40, just really pretty quiet. I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, so that was probably my closest introduction into some of the civics world and government world, because we'd get a merit badge for going to a city council meeting, but not really super in tune with that. I did not have kind of local government in mind growing up at all.
Mm. I have in my notes that you in high school you did some cross country, some wrestling, and then some theater, which are two kind of interesting things: the wrestler and the theater. And it
Yeah.
echoes my own story. I was a wrestler. In fact, my only regret from high school is I didn't wrestle all 4 years. I only wrestled my senior year. And it's I wish I could have changed that, but it's heavily involved in music, the arts, and theater. Tell us about as you're in high school, I always think it's interesting to look back on some of those experiences and what kind of the extracurricular things and how they maybe even played in to who you are today. And I think theater on stage, being a public
Right.
personality now and leader. What was some of that experience like in high school?
Okay. Yeah. So wrestling and cross country are both individual sports. So um, it doesn't have kind of that teamwork. There is that team dynamic, as you know, from wrestling and stuff, but it's you competing against yourself. So that really instills some of that dedication you have to have and that self motivation. It's kind of a lot of that win or lose is on your own back, what you put into it, what you give into it. So a lot of that determination of putting all the effort forward and knowing that ultimately you are responsible for yourself was kind of important lessons coming from both cross country and wrestling. Theater has helped a lot off and on. It was fun then. I don't want to say council meetings are theater because they're not, or plan commission meetings. It's not theater, but being comfortable in front of an audience, um, that certainly helped me along that journey, and having that presence and kind of wherewithal of, hey, there's an audience you have to be cognizant of and read and kind of react to that. So,
Such a great point about wrestling. I was one of those kids in high school that dreaded team projects because I knew that I had a high standard and knew I was going to end up doing all the work, and that somebody else, some kid who didn't want to do any work, was going to get all the credit for my hard work. And
right.
and wrestling was kind of like that. You're a part of the team and your points contribute to the team, but you're on the mat alone. There is no. It's all about you. I like that. So talk about when did you start working for the town of Cumberland? What did you do? How did you even hear about it? Tell us about what opened that door.
So I was navigating getting into school kind of part time, trying to pay my own way through school. Um, I was, like I said, working in restaurants, and I was like, this isn't going to pay for school. I was working kind of shop, making sandwiches. And so I actually found out through church that the town of Cumberland was hiring part time seasonal laborers for the public works department. So back in 2007, I applied for that job and I started mowing grass seasonally and patching potholes while going to school at IUPUI, which is now IUND and Purdue ND as of a few years ago.
Mm. So here you are. You're probably, I'm sure, again, in a family of five. You have lots of chores. I'm sure probably mowing the grass was maybe one of them. And so you're like, oh, I can get paid to do what I do at home. Here we
Right,
go.
right.
What was it like? Was it just kind of, some people, a lot of people will work for parks, so they'll kind of have a local government job or working for the city, but they really won't have it's amazing how we can work, mowing the grass, doing some work for the city, but we don't really understand the whole complex of what a city is and what they're up to and what they're doing. As you start working, as you start doing that, especially with public works, what was it like? What was the awareness like of like, oh, this is kind of interesting? And was it like, oh, no, I'm going to school, this is just job? Or was there any kind of, oh, what is this? This might be an interesting kind of career choice field. What was that like looking all the way back?
Maybe I should back up just slightly going into that because public service was always in mind for me. It's just not local government is not what I thought. I had actually anticipated joining the Marine Corps and serving in the military. When I was 16 years old, about ready to turn 17, my older brother passed away. And at that time, I was pulley kind of training with Marine Corps, trying to get in and prepare for that. But because of my brother passing, I decided to withdraw from that and look at other avenues of how I could get into public service. So moving into just this kind of seasonal part-time job, like it was at least something that I felt could be in service to the public. I wasn't fully aware to what degree that would be. I knew I eventually wanted to be involved in public service on the environmental side, which was what I was trying to get into school for. But I thought working for the town could also help, give me some of that experience and background. I will say it was a little bit of a culture shock going from a sandwich shop to mowing grass and patching holes. And at that time, I was 18, working with a bunch of uh, guys that were friends, but also in their 50s and 60s, who had been doing that career their whole life. And definitely gave me a new set of knowledge and a little bit of a shock there. So,
I bet. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. I'm interested. Obviously, when you have something traumatic like that, I mean, a sibling passing away, it's life altering, especially at that age. And it changed. All of a sudden, here's an event that changes the course of what you had planned. And one of the things I hope to do with this podcast is encourage young people that there is no one path, there's no derailment. Like you have your whole life. And in
yeah,
fact, when you're young, you're going to make what you might perceive as mistakes or failures, and they're really not. It's all about the journey. That's what life is. It's this adventure of how the path winds and turns. And so, what was it about environmental science that was the attraction? Especially like when I think about environmental science, usually I think about people on the coast that might be more culturally like those are things that are more cultural. I don't think about Indiana and environmental science necessarily. So what happened there that kind of turned that onto your foresight and into your mind?
environmental science, water quality, those areas appealed to me because I've always loved being outdoors. Like I mentioned, doing Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, we were always camping outdoors in the state parks, state forests, learning to go through that. My brother and I were in scouting together. My family was a big camping family every summer, you know, tent camping out there and seeing kind of litter and issues and learning over time about different, water quality issues with agricultural runoff and those things. It made me want to get involved with kind of cleaning up the environment, protecting those natural resources, because just seeing kind of that impact over the years through scouting and camping. And um, also, there was just a lot of good documentaries coming out around the time that interested me. So,
Hmm. I love that. I think that's one of the important things. Even as a parent, I'm a parent. I have 4 kids, and just thinking about these things that shape us, that open our eyes to not only the opportunities but the possibilities and the challenges. I think that's always, I hear people, oh, you got to find your passion. What's your passion? And I always think, sometimes your passion is something that you can look at and go, man, that needs to change, right? It's kind of the things that can concern you can be your passions. And so I love this. So you're working, you're getting this whole new, you got 50-year-old friends now in public works, you're
right.
mowing grass, you're going to school part-time. When does, I think you do that for a couple of years there, just kind of seasonal employee, public works
Yep.
labor. Then all of a sudden, stormwater tech environmental service in 2009. Tell us about the trajectory. What happens, and even in that move.
Sure. Yeah. So the town around that time period was forming their first stormwater utility. Obviously, we had always had drainage, stormwater infrastructure, but the state had, set up legislation to where communities could form stormwater utilities with certain environmental requirements reporting, but as a way to generate revenue for that infrastructure. So the council at that time decided to go down that path and set up a stormwater utility and a stormwater utility board. And because that's the path that I was on in my education and things, they asked me if I would stay and if I'd be interested in launching that with them. And I thought, hey, this is a good opportunity. I hadn't planned on having that opportunity with the town, but just finishing up the school, having the opportunity to launch a stormwater utility and get in the clean water, stormwater environment, just kind of fell into my lap there, and it was too hard to turn down. But interestingly enough, at that same time period, because we didn't know what that would be, I was helping them launch the utility, but also mowing grass and patching holes and stuff. So it's kind of overseeing a department, but still working in the other.
You found out real quickly that local government often requires multiple hats.
For sure.
You don't just get to do the one thing you want. You got to do whatever keeps the city moving forward. I love that. And you end up doing that for a handful of years. 2013, you become a public works supervisor. So you just are you just keep on saying yes? What does it look like as you're wearing all these hats and doing the public works thing?
So that one's interesting. When I first moved into that, I did not say yes to that one. That was a voluntold. One of my mentors, Andrew Klinger, who's a town manager out in Plainfield, Indiana, was town manager in Cumberland at that time. And my predecessor was leaving the job, and Andrew had called me to his office and told me, hey, you're taking over streets and parks. I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you're taking over streets and parks, and you'll be, kind of doing the stormwater thing as well. And I said, okay, that's great, but kind of what's the plan here? How are we going to do this? And some of it was, we're going to play by ear. And he was flexible with me, obviously, coaching me up, kind of investing in me as a leader and mentor, and saying, hey, we'll give this, probationary period for your comfort level and things, and get you to, streets conferences, stormwater conferences, all these environments, and surrounded with the people and resources that can help you along the way.
Okay, I love this. I have two questions. So the first one is, when did before this, when Andrew voluntold you what to do, how aware were you of the town manager, of that role? Was that right away as you kind of started working for the city, or did that, when did your awareness of even that position and kind of what more was going on in the city? When did your education kind of unfold in that experience?
I would say pretty aware early on. I think back then Cumberland struggled with a lot of issues. There was a lot of siloing between departments, and kind of rough feelings and stuff between management, public works, and police, and some turmoil there. So I was very aware of the role at that point in time. When I first started, this was prior to Andrew, and just because of those dynamics that were in place when I started with the town, which have gotten better and better over time as things have kind of progressed through the years. But being aware of it as a positive thing, I think more happened once I started working for Andrew, and Andrew had came into the picture and tried to break down those silos a little bit more, and actually interact with the departments and have a little bit more of a kind of walkabout leadership style, and kind of
I love that.
heal some wounds.
So yeah, right. And so he tells you you're going to take on some more. Here's another hat. And you mentioned one of the things. So then he kind of gives you that probation period to feel like you don't have to just, step in full bore right away. But one of the things you mentioned is, let's send you to some streets, some parks conferences, and I think that's one of the things that's so cool about local government is it's not like, even if you go get a degree, I mean, it's not like there's a degree for streets and parks, right? Like
Right.
there's not even, most people get a poli-sci degree, policy. They don't even get anything that's really, I don't even, there is a local gov degree. I mean, the MPA, right? But that's,
Yep.
that's still a lot of book stuff. That I think that local government work is so hands-on. And so like even planners, like how much, it's, you get in and you're like, oh, this isn't quite what I learned. And you got to go
Right.
and learn. And so what was that like, just the process of kind of going, of feeling like, I don't know, I want to do water. What is the streets of park? What was that process of getting in the weeds of that and building some connections and going to some of that and learning the education side of it? What was that like?
So getting used to the actual department was relatively easy as far as knowing the existing conditions, right? Because I'd been working within that department. That's kind of where I started seasonally. And I had seen the issues from the inside of a lack of systems and processes and some of the morale issues in question from that standpoint. But learning how to address those issues definitely helped more by networking. I think networking in local government's huge because if you have a network, it's people you can call and say, "Hey, have you seen this? What do you do about this issue?" And then conferences, going to the Indiana Street Commissioners Association, Purdue Road School, and Indiana Parks and Rec Association, those things. It was just a wealth of people that I could call on, but also ideas that I could bring back to our community of how we start streamlining these things. And it's kind of nice when you move up in a department you're familiar with, because a lot of times people, man, I wish I could do this different, or man, this one thing. But when you know the department, know those issues, and you actually get the opportunity to kind of step into that role and do that's a good feeling. One of the things we had large deferred maintenance issues, and that's deferred maintenance keeps me up at night nationally. It's a huge issue. But like, I feel like I've said my whole career basically has been taking over areas of deferred maintenance. And that was kind of one of the things we got going there, building our asset management plan and getting our road ratings up to some of the highest in central Indiana now over that time period.
Wow. I love it. And that is the thing. That's why, in fact, I'm trying to think of Rich's last name, Rich Diamandis. I'm going to butcher that last name. He, I think is part of the Purdue Road School, for the APWA,
Yeah.
there.
That,
And
yeah, that I think that's correct as well. So
yeah, Rich is a good guy. I love connecting with him and what they're trying to do there to get the chapter back up. I think that's another thing. Like all these APWA chapters, road schools, there's all these ways, right, to get training, to get support and connection, networking. One of the cool things, and I love that you just said that, the deferred maintenance. These projects are so huge. Like whether it's streets, whether it's underground infrastructure, your water, your sewer, just the plants, treatment plants. I mean, these things, it's not like they're a couple $1,000. I mean, millions of dollars. And the technology that goes into that is so crazy. And yet we just take it for granted. We just, again, if I'm a resident, I just expect, my water to turn on and my toilet to flush. And it's like, do we really? And then we complain about taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. It's like, do you understand what it takes to make these modern services possible? One of the other things, though, while you're there, speaking of about just daily right maintenance and then these huge projects you got to be thinking about, one of the other things you do is emergency management liaison. And I think that's another thing, is just, making sure people are prepared. And people don't, I love bragging about public works. And when I spoke for Cal Cities, their League of Cities, a year ago after the fires in LA, and said, people don't realize that, all the firefighters, and again, rightfully so, we give them the recognition coming in and saving the day, but it's public works right alongside them. And when you have emergencies, flood, fire, etc., natural disaster, public works is there, not only there in the heat of the moment, clearing roads, trying to make sure that emergency personnel can get to those things, but they also have to do the cleanup work years after, trying to restore that community to thriving. Talk about the emergency management liaison and just what did that look like, trying to prepare a city for a possible catastrophe.
Sure. Around that time within Hancock County, Cumberland sits in two counties, actually, Marion County and Hancock County, but the whole county was updating the countywide emergency response plans to register with Homeland Security and FEMA, so that if there were a disaster, that we would be covered and have funding. So that's a position I was interested in and actually volunteered to get involved in, and had done some training on and had some background in that, and had been actually trying to work towards the town getting more heavily involved in our local planning, just reading how much things had changed kind of post 9/11, post Katrina, and all these huge events that have happened within our country, and seeing even in the 90s, a large tornado that came through Cumberland. And at that point in time, public works and, police, local fire and people were out for weeks doing cleanup and remediation and stuff for that damage. But plans and procedures hadn't really been built and put in place. And some of the interlocal agreements for service, if, our equipment all gets hit, some of that hadn't been built out. So I jumped at that opportunity, and we worked for probably a year and a half on that county project and got that adopted by all the communities for that coverage and mutual support, but actually started doing tabletop trainings and scenarios for tornadoes and other large scale disasters and things that were probable for our town, but also within kind of our county in central Indiana. So definitely something that's a little bit different than the deferred maintenance side. It's planning ahead, which is how you get in front of deferred maintenance, I guess, though, too. So somewhat related, but huge area.
A great point. And it's one of those things, I'm sure, that can be like, well, it's not a pressing need. It's not like we're in the middle of it. We can defer it and not, but like you say, if you're not prepared, then when it hits, it hits, 10x of being prepared for these things. And so it's taking the time. I'm sure that, you're already busy, but taking the time to, hey, let's do the scenarios. I think about Brent Burek in Perryville, Missouri, and they faced a number of tornadoes. In fact, some just huge, devastating ones. And he mentioned if you wait for the state, especially if you wait for FEMA to come around, like you're so far behind the eight ball, like being prepared and getting your people to respond and the surrounding communities to respond, and just having some awareness of how that interaction, because it's really a communication thing, right? I'm sure that's a huge thing that you practice is, what do we need? How do we communicate together to make sure that things are being, that people can respond? What a cool opportunity. And, to see, just take an initiative to that, to be prepared as much as you can be. Obviously, you can never be prepared perfectly, I'm sure, but better than not being prepared at all, right?
For sure.
Then in 2017, you decide, now tell us, are you voluntold or you take it? You become the director of public works for the town of Cumberland. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So unified public works director kind of happened. That one was me, not a voluntold. Our former utilities director, because I had actually split out from stormwater a little bit after establishing that, focusing more on streets and parks and some of that emergency management, and had gotten, like I said, kind of our road ratings and things up and gotten a lot more systems and processes in place. But our utility director was retiring, and the town manager at that time, Andrew, had left at this time. It was a woman named April Fisher was town manager at that time. She was looking at what to do, trying to figure out what to list it. And something about me is I get bored very easily if I don't feel challenged or feel like I have new problems to deal with. And I was starting to feel a little bit stagnant just doing the items and areas I was handling. So I went to her and pitched a unified public works director where I'd oversee all those elements that I was already overseeing, but take over our two separate sanitary utilities, take stormwater back in, and our water utility at that time, which made her a little bit nervous because we had to do that, and it was a lot to oversee, but I was very confident that I could do it with kind of my background and some of the planning and things that went into it, as long as we could structure around that. I wanted to move somebody up as a deputy alongside me, so I had that resource, and kind of went from there. But yeah, we took over all those departments, unified them, and tried to streamline them a little bit more, because all those departments interact and overlap anyway. So there's a lot of themes and just, I don't know, efficiencies that were created from doing it, really.
Well, I also want to ask, because you've mentioned it kind of as a part of the story, that when you kind of started working for Cumberland, there was a lot of kind of fracturing, department silos, and you see that all the time. It's one of the things I probably speak and coach on the most is a collaboration, and how do you get these organizations or these departments to collaborate. And even inside a department, you can have fracturing over who gets the tools and who bought the tools, and right, who gets the truck. Tell us about when you consolidate that. Was that part of the thing too, is just creating a healthier culture in all those ways to work together, to also feel like, and that's the kind of the tension. How do they work together, but how do they have dependence? And what did that look like? Maybe some insights from bringing that together and just culture.
Sure. We started with, I knew a lot of utility guys, right? Because I had worked, in the same environment, but our utility guys, particularly water and wastewater, are on different site locations than pretty much everyone else. Our town hall and our streets and parks building are side by side, and you have to travel a little bit further if you want to get to our utility plants at that time. So I started by just connecting with those employees, going out, spending time at the plant, spending time with each of them, asking what they need to do their job, telling them, we're going to get together as a group after this, but I wanted to meet with every member individually, hear their concerns, thoughts, ideas, and even some of their beliefs on the town and service, what public service means to them. And even the administration, right? Seeing if they felt positively about the administration, negatively, what their connection level of what's going on with the sanitary board, water boards, like those utility boards. Are they connected with what's actually happening there? Do they understand those people are supporting them? Do they have kind of mixed messaging? And then kind of bring them alongside our streets and parks people too, to kind of mesh and have full department get together meetings so that we could talk about where we can all work together and how we can improve. What we did find is the utilities was kind of the most siloed, because partially just actually the geography, like I said, they were further apart, but there was a lot of a lot of them perceived that the council at that time were against them, or that the town would not invest in them or kind of their infrastructure and things. So that was something I was surprised to find out, because I'd sat in, pretty much every council meeting and some of the utility board meetings. And I was like, I've almost never heard a nay vote. I've almost unanimously supported. So I had to figure out what that breakdown was. And it was just communication up the chain and down the chain. So that was something I knew we needed to address right away. And then again, there was a lot of deferred maintenance, which was leading to a lot of those perceptions, because these guys had been reporting, hey, this plant is failing, these pumps are going out, some of this isn't safe, and then weren't seeing those changes. But unfortunately, those weren't making it to the board, and they weren't making it into plans, and things weren't being put into place. So they just felt like the town didn't care because there wasn't that level of investment there. So that was something I worked with them side by side, kind of, let's make a plan here. Let's start with the safety issues. Look at the board minutes, come to a board meeting. I promise you, like, once the board, utility board is aware of these issues, they'll fix it. And that kind of really brought those guys into the fold, and feeling supported and understanding that the appointed officials and the elected officials had their backs.
We're living through one of the biggest shifts local government has ever seen. Not political, not cultural, it's digital. AI, automation, cybersecurity, cloud migration, none of this used to be part of your job description. But now it's the choppy water every city and county is swimming in. And for many leaders, it feels less like innovation and more like what's going to break next, and will we survive it? Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. A lot of governments aren't afraid of the cloud. They're afraid of getting it wrong. because the stakes are real. You're trying to protect data, modernize ancient systems, improve service, and keep your residents happy, all while staying under budget and out of the fire. That's why I appreciate the team at Tyler Technologies. They don't talk about the cloud like it's magic pixie dust. They break it down. What to migrate, when to migrate, how to get long-term value without blowing your budget or burning out your people. They've helped more local governments make this transition than anyone I know, and they've put all their best insights into a new ebook about cloud adoption and strategy. If you're trying to lead your organization into the future instead of getting dragged there, you got to check this out. Their newest guide is called Modern Governments Live in the Cloud, and you can download it for free at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter, WINTER. tylertech.com/winter. Go check it out. Download the free guide. Now, back to the conversation. Okay, this is so good because it brings up a couple things in my mind. One of the first is specifically with like public works or any part of local government that's not really administration, especially that's more hands-on, doing more physical labor. I oftentimes wonder if the gap of that reality, especially in the bigger the city gets, the more a gap there is between the people sitting in the comfy office and the people out in the streets. And I saw this specifically during the pandemic where, potholes still needed to be fixed, water still needed to be delivered, sewer still needed to pump, and trash still needed to be collected. And those people were essential. And yet they, they oftentimes interacted with their leadership through virtual Zoom calls, with the leaders in their home, in their comfy pajamas, and they're out there freezing in the cold. It seems like we often make assumptions. We fill in the gaps, and most of our assumptions are negative, right? And so it's harder to have positive assumptions, especially when your narrative, right? You say, well, I'm here and this thing's failing and no one's doing anything about it. What did you do? I mean, obviously you said, I love this. You went out to them and you had conversations with them. What would be your encouragement to someone who might be in a similar, where it feels like there's a fracture between the front lines and either administration or higher up in the organization? How do you create that? It's one thing to go out and connect with them once. How do you keep the connection? How do you keep the support and the ear when you're a busy person, right? You got to, it's not like you just sitting in your office twiddling your thumbs, making excuses why you're not going out. You're busy. How do you think that works? And especially with what you said about communication, how do you make sure that communication is getting to you through all those lines of bureaucracy, through all those lines of even people going, I don't want to be the problem. In fact, we talked about that this week in our leadership development program. One of the books we looked at was a lot of times people do not bring up problems because they don't want to be a problem. They don't want to, oh gosh, I'm just, it's always negative. They want to, I'll just take care of it. And then it doesn't get taken care of. What are some of your insights there in that department?
I always tell people I want to hear from them, but I also build it into my schedule to where my department heads, I have routine meetings with, so I'm always talking with them, but I also build that walkabout leadership into my schedule. I'm not going to get out as much as I want to often with my schedule, but I do have reserved block off times where I know nothing else can take place. So I'm going to actually go physically visit our plants or go say hey to guys in the field. We'll get lunch sometimes, those type of things too, to stay connected, because I think you have to have that FaceTime to an extent. I think the larger your community is, the more difficult that becomes, but you can still go visit those sites, and you can bring people in for you can do quarterly all staff meetings and lunches and things. I think breaking bread, it really connects you on a different level. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, unless you do something crazy, you're not in trouble for telling me there's an issue. I want to know the issue, because when we know there's an issue, we can fix it. If we don't know, we can't fix it. And that's a bigger problem, particularly if it is a physical issue, because nothing's cheaper tomorrow than it is today. And we need to get ahead of that. So I still reinforce chain of command. I tell people, I'm like, I don't want to, you know, hear your gripes if you haven't talked with your boss first, or you don't think you're getting what you need from your boss. Like you need to follow those steps until you feel like it needs to be elevated, because I don't want to undermine my department heads or those supervisors. But I still think you have to, joke around and break bread and just physically go out and see everybody and connect with everybody. You don't want to be a figurehead that people feel like they can't connect with. And all my public works people joke, they call me a house cat. The ones that knew me when I was still in just streets and parks, they say, well, you're just a house cat now. You're not an outside cat like we are. But it's getting in with them, getting those jokes, and getting food and those type things that really, I think, build that connection. And one last thing I'd add to that too is making sure everybody within the organization knows why their job is important for the community. As like you said earlier, a lot of people think, this is just a job. I just mow grass, or I just mow streets, but or not mow streets, patch streets, and work the utilities. But they need to understand how that's a part of the big picture, and how they are serving the public. And oftentimes, the public actually cares more about what they're doing than what I'm doing, because they see the roads, they see the parks and the trails. When the toilet flushes, they're very happy. When water comes on, they're very happy. They don't care about 90% of the ordinances and policy I work on with the council, but they do care about roads that are safe to drive on and those things. And we also can't do all the policy and the economic development and those things if you don't have your, streets, parks, utilities, police, and all those other items in place and functioning at a good level.
Such a great point. And I think, again, just to reiterate, making sure those frontline employees not only know why they're doing it and how that impact, but then reinforcing that. Like, it doesn't take much time. I mean, taking a few minutes out of your week and writing a quick note, heading over there when you can, and patting someone on the back and saying, man, thanks for doing that work. That's important. It's viable to the whole, like you say, you can't do economic. No one's going to want to come invest in your town if, streets are all
Right.
shot and, nothing's working. So such a great point. Okay, then in the story, 2021, you get bored again, I guess. Tell us how you end up as the town manager.
So at that time, April Fisher was leaving my predecessor, and I had worked she was the third town manager with two council interims in between some of those, and was kind of getting a grips on a lot of the utilities. We had big projects and things moving and getting it moving the direction I wanted to. A little bit of that boredom was slipping back in. And I talked with my assistant town manager at that time, because her and I have worked, or she's my assistant town manager now, but at that time we were both departments. And I talked to her and I said, hey, I think I may want to do this. Is this something you're interested in? Which she ultimately was not, but neither one of us really wanted to train another town manager, just to joke around about it. But we both knew that we knew the town the best, and we wanted to keep driving the vision and things that the council had and these large projects that were going on. And I felt pretty strongly that there was a lot more the town could be doing on economic development front and some of policy front, that I felt kind of called into. It was weird. I honestly never thought I'd want to be the town manager. I liked what I was doing. I, like I said, do get bored easily, but I felt like I was called to do it because the community had invested so much in me, and I've been trying to give that back the whole time, and lead with a servant's heart. And I wanted to invest back in the community and things that I saw were needed and possible. There was Uh, a lot of the town administration, town departments were functioning pretty well at that time, but there was a pretty big divide between town administration and public safety that I felt like I could help with that situation. Um, there was some unique legislative items that I felt like we could get done that the town historically didn't think they could tackle, and it just really thought could clean up policy to make it better for the community and work well with the council and reinvest in the staff.
I love that you, again, it's always, those who know really how a city functions and have a passion for, we can do this. We can, I think I always bring up Luke Dyer in Van Buren, Maine, who just, he was the police chief forever, and then he becomes the town manager, and he's like, why can't we thrive? Why can't it be us? Why can't it be now? And so I just love these stories where you see it and then you step up, because let's be honest about it. And this is where I'd love to hear, you get comfortable. And that's why I think, when you become a department head, you're like, I've arrived, man. This is my shift now. I'm over to this aircraft carrier. I know what it takes. And you can kind of mail it in, but you can also create new projects to kind of keep the energy and the bug, of attention going. To take over the town management, like you say, now all of a sudden you got to know all the departments and all, not only you got economic development and housing and all the stuff, but also now you're the lightning rod. Any of the drama of all those departments, of all those silos, now that comes to you. And not only, I always say, town management, city management is the municipal tightrope. You get to be on the tightrope, but you get to be, you not only you have to walk the tightrope, you have to fight the three-headed snake. You've got your staff and all the drama of staff and multiple departments and silos, but you also have council now. Now you've got elected officials, and they're like wildebeest, and trying to herd them as all crazy cats. But then you have community residents, and it's not like every council person thinks alike, and it's definitely not like every community resident thinks alike. Everyone wants their thing and their things going, and guess who has to manage that and balance that and care for that? The town manager. So tell us, what was it like when you got in? Obviously, you see it, you see the opportunity, you get excited to serve and excited to bring some vision and some work to some neat things that you see. But what was it like to all of a sudden get in the role, into the seat, and go, uh-oh, I got to buckle up for the reality of what this is? Tell us about it.
It was unique. It was more of a change than I maybe thought it would be at the time. I had zero white hair when I started the position 5 years ago. I have more and more now. But I knew I needed to get with the council and kind of refresh their vision. It was a weird time because we were starting to come out of COVID a little bit. We were still kind of operating in that world and realm, though, and the council hadn't really taken on big projects or vision type things in a long while. So I knew we needed to have kind of a retreat and a work session. We did that to kind of come up with what the direction of the town, what direction the town needed to go. It kind of came from that was we really needed to get more actively engaged in economic development and community growth. We needed to revitalize our parks. We needed to continue tackling the large public works projects. And in Marion County, Indianapolis and Marion County are a part of Unigov. It's all consolidated city, county, township, and we were included where some cities are excluded. So in a minority of our community, we were going to have to make some changes to be able to provide the same equitable services that we did in the rest of the community in Hancock County. So from that, we started running with that direction.
Back.
There you are.
All right, take it from wherever. I'm not sure where you stopped, but maybe take that part over again about just what did I say? From taking the role.
Moving into the role. Yeah. So when I took on the role, like I said, it was definitely a change from what I had been doing, more so than I thought, partially or mostly I think just being close to the political level is the thing that I learned over time was the most different. But I knew coming out of COVID and things, we needed to refresh and have kind of a retreat and get an idea of what the vision of this council was and what direction we needed to be moving. And from that, we really came out with an understanding that we needed to be focusing more intentionally on economic development and our growth, reinvesting into our parks and trails system and growing that. And we needed to tackle tough legislation of getting out of Unigov in Marion County, Indiana, which is Indianapolis, the county, townships, cities, and towns were all consolidated, except for a few excluded cities, but Cumberland was included at that time. And like I said earlier in the podcast, the majority of our communities in Hancock County now, but the minority was in Marion County. So in Hancock County, we can provide high level of service, fully autonomous, but in the Marion County portion of town, there's several functions that we can't provide equitable service to because they have to go through the city county government. So they have different zoning regulations. We don't have redevelopment authority on that side of the town, code enforcement, those things that we do in Hancock County. So, which was something the council had thought would be impossible because it would take an act of legislation. But I felt very strongly that that was something that we could get done, which we did actually get done in the legislative session. That was the 24-25 Indiana State Legislative Session. So that's been going well, and we're working towards getting out of that. The economic development and growth. We're a town of under 7,000. We've approved close to 3,000 housing units since I became town manager. Our commercial growth is starting to take off. So we're moving away from being just a bedroom community to where we start having some more of those uses and things. So that's going well. We did our first kind of bonding program. And as a part of that, we've started reinvesting in parks and trail infrastructure. So that's going well. So we're actually set to realign and have another large retreat and kind of update or refresh a 5-year strategic plan and make sure those goals and visions still align and what the next step in all those items are.
Wow, that's a lot of work, especially when you talk about policy changes at the state level. That, oh gosh, talk about a can of worms. I'm sure that was, I can't believe you still have a head of hair. It'd be like me, pull it all out. Let's talk about Cumberland, because we haven't really dove into the details. You just mentioned it's almost 7,000. You're 30 minutes east, I think, of Indianapolis. And like you say, it's always interesting to watch what becomes, just as a city grows, these kind of bedroom communities, but those bedroom communities all of a sudden become full-fledged places, and they have to support, economic. No one wants to all of a sudden drive into the city to go to Trader Joe's and to Target. They want all those resources right there, right at their disposal. So what has that been like over the time that you've been in town as a town manager, and where are you going now? What are those, what's the big priorities on your plate, and how are you tackling those?
Sure. So when I started, the town was much smaller. We're probably about half the size that we are now, and had a lot of our neighborhoods that are there now weren't even there. And I kind of started with the town around the time of the Great Recession. So, around that time, there wasn't new growth spurring either. And since that time, I've seen our town grow quite a bit. Like I said, almost double in population. But we've added trails. We didn't have a trail network when I started working for the town, and now 95% of our neighborhoods in town are connected to the same trail network, and you can get to the grocery store, some of the local restaurants, and all over to the parks and things from that network. And focused on a lot of that growth. So kind of what's next is continuing to build and bring those amenities to the community. continuing with economic development. We don't really have room in Cumberland for, there's not a healthy land use area for industrial. So trying to open up a pathway or corridor to get to some kind of industry for town for that kind of next level of economic development is a priority kind of the council and mine. We're trying to eye areas of where smart growth, smart industry could happen for the community and continue to build that economic base so the town has that stability through market changes as the town continues to grow. Our residents love our parks, our events. We have a lot of events for a community our size that are town-led events and recreation. So continuing to build in and upon those things is pretty huge, just because we know that's what the citizens like. We really are, we just try to be a place, right? We talk about placemaking government a lot, and Cumberland, I think, does a very good job at that because we have a lot of public art. We have our trails. Now I think it's just bringing additional amenities, more commercial amenities that are open for the public. Like you said, as you grow, people don't want to travel as much for that. They want to see those things in town. We know Cumberland residents like music a lot because that's what they want is more of our music events, and they like local craft brews. So getting breweries and things like that, those kind of local touches are, I think, really the next step as our population continues to grow.
I love it. I love it. There's vision, there's movement. Now let's talk about how a couple of things come to mind when you have growth like that. That's a lot of growth for a small place, and small places don't always like growth, right? I mean, especially you've got some people who've been around and they remember Cumberland when it was, half the size, and they're looking at these new people going, who are you? You're the city folk. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and I remember some of that. All of a sudden there's a new subdivision down the road and we're all farmers, with 100-acre plots, and all of a sudden it's like, who are you city folk with your, wanting your city service? What did that obviously, I know there's you faced some incivility in a small town, some outrage over a zoning case. I want you to talk about that, but one of the reasons I want to bring it up too is not only because we're all, every community, in light of the national politics, national scene, and just the drama of media right now, is facing incivility. I think there's that's why, again, I care so much for our city, our county, our town managers, who are, I think, a lot of times the lightning rod for that. Your position, it's not you personally, it's your position and your role. Part of the responsibility is taking that emotional outrage at times. Tell us about what you had to face there, because I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a small town. It's Leave It to Beaver. Everyone loves each other. It's Pleasantville," and it even comes to small towns. So tell us your story.
For sure. So, as you said, growth isn't always welcomed by all, and we have been growing very rapidly over the past several years. And Cumberland is unique. Like I said, we're between kind of two counties, and Marion County is very urbanized, and Hancock County has been very rural and somewhat suburban. And we're kind of that brackish water suburban area between the urbanized area and kind of the rural area. So we've had some difficult plan commission cases, but we had one in particular, very long meeting, a lot of remonstrators, predominantly from the rural area, a lot of them not town residents, but from the rural farmland and unincorporated area around the town. Plan commission, ultimately, the development aligned with our comprehensive plan, was appropriate land use, large housing development, but they met the design standards and kind of everything that was requested. So they gave it a favorable recommendation to the town council, which ultimately the council adopted that zoning and the development's moving forward. But that evening and over the next couple of days, I, at the time, didn't have my social media locked down. And so some of the remonstrators made dummy accounts, if you will, unless it was actually Tom Brady, because one of them was named Tom Brady and had that image. Went on my Facebook account and were making threats on my life, but also talking negatively about my wife and my son, who's 5 now, who was 4 at the time, and some threats on them. So I've locked it down since then. We also had one of the remonstrators commenting negatively all over the town's page. Of course, he changed his picture to the infamous Killdozer incident, like that, to kind of put that on a pedestal and almost like another veiled threat. But that was probably the first time I had to actually, in my entire career, sit and pause and think about, am I still doing what I want to do? Is this the right thing? Just because I don't really so much get fazed by threats on me, but when you start, targeting my young son and my wife and stuff, like I get mad, but also, concerned. Like I didn't put a whole lot of weight in those threats as being legitimate. These are angry farmers and things, but in our climate of political theater and political outrage and social media weaponizing our fear and our anger and those things, you just see more and more of that, and you don't know. But ultimately, through talking with my wife and being in prayer and talking with my mentors and fellow town managers and stuff about the situation, I knew I was still doing the right thing. And I have very much peace that I'm serving where I'm supposed to be serving. And ultimately, I'm sure things like that may happen again, but I'm doing what I'm called to do.
I just thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, because I don't think, that's part of the thing I'm trying to do with the podcast, is just shine the spotlight on the role and the responsibilities and the work that you do. And no one, no matter what you're doing, should have to put up with that. It's just BS. It's just not healthy. It doesn't do anything for anyone, right? It's not like if the decisions have been made, it's not going to do. There are other healthy channels instead of threats to people. And the reality is, even though you can say, okay, I know it's probably not, valid in a real, it's just emotional chaos, you still have to sleep with that. And in fact, you don't sleep with it. It keeps you up at night, and you have a job that doesn't need to be done on more little sleep, right?
For
And
sure.
I think that's the thing I like to bring up, is just again, we need residents to be involved, and your passion is fine. Bring your passion, but let's make sure that our passion and our debate is in that center, in that sphere, right? I think that's what we've lost. It's just like there is no debate. It's just outrage, and it's concerning for the nation. And it's concerning at the local level. That's my concern, is, who's going to go to DC and actually, protest and get heard by anyone, the president, Senate.
Right.
But you can go down to City Hall anytime you want, and you can be, your voice can be heard, and that's awesome. And yet it should carry a responsibility that we're all trying to make our communities better, to make sure that they thrive. Like you say, if you cannot keep your community the way it was, it will bankrupt itself. And the idea, I think there was a lot of, as I talked to city managers across the nation, I just think a lot of people, again, we all complain about paying taxes. It's very American to complain about taxes. But if you don't have, it's not like, what are you going to do without those modern day services that now you feel entitled to? Like, you wouldn't last 24 hours without your sewer working, right? It's just like, we need these things. You've got to figure out then how to pay for it. Like you say, infrastructure, again, coming up from public works, you see the price tag of those, not just the streets, not just the things that you take for granted, the snow removal, like you're doing now, right? You're in a foot deep of snow. Thank goodness for snow plows and snow trucks and the people that will work overtime to make sure that you can get to the grocery store to get some more bread and milk. And we just take it, we're very entitled to the modern day essential services that our cities and towns provide. And I just love pointing out the spotlight. And again, thanks for sharing that and making sure that we go, how can we act better? How can we still, right? It's fine to disagree, but how do we act in that, and making sure we don't act like little children, I guess. Worse than children. If my children acted that way, that'd be swift discipline. I want to be mindful of your time. You've mentioned it in throughout your story, just the people who have had influence on you, that have come alongside for training, for development, for encouragement, for support, just like you in your story there. You didn't have to just face it alone. You had mentors, you had people to encourage you and to help you walk through that. You are the president of the Indiana Municipal Management Association. I love these associations. I think they are vital to not only the insights that you need for a role. Again, town managers, you have to have all this. I mean, you oversee all these areas. There's no town manager that's a czar and all the intellect that you need to all the areas that you oversee. And so having other resources and people in that role to share their insights, to share their wins, to share their challenges. But also, again, you're the only town manager in Cumberland. It's not like you go to a Chamber of Commerce event and there's four of you that you can all kind of moan together about the chaos of your role. You've got to go to one of these kind of, regional or state association events, conferences. And that's why it's important to carve out the time, I think, to go. You need one another. You need a healthy place to vent. You need a healthy place to be encouraged and supported in this unique role that you serve in. Talk about what it's been like to be the president of it. Where are you guys going? What's your vision for that unique association and what you're doing for the role?
Sure. I actually just started my term as president, moving in from first VP. As first VP, I led us not updating, we added ethics to our bylaws, because we didn't have an ethics policy and code of conduct and removal procedures and those things, because kind of like we were talking about in the climate we are, I think as professional managers, it's really important for us to reinforce those things. So that has been kind of one of the major things that I want to reinforce in my presidency, is making sure we are reinforcing kind of the ethics of professional management and not succumbing to the culture and environment that we are in, so that we can reinforce local government being a safe space and a good place that's benefiting our communities. I want to continue to grow our membership within the state, because for me, IMMA is the most important organization I'm a part of. It's like you said, I'm the only manager in Cumberland, and it's going to be the same for all the communities. And beyond that, there's very little people who fully understand what we do. So when you have an organization like that, it's one of the few places you can go and people will truly get the stress you're in or the problems you're facing, more so than any other level. Nobody in my family's a manager, right, for a city or town or village. So I can talk with them and love them and they love me, but they don't fully get what it means all the time. So that's a group where we can do that and share that and have that camaraderie and that network and that support. As president, I really want to focus on getting together more for that reason, because a lot of us are facing similar turbulence with the political environment and things that we're in, but also redoing strategic plan and figure out kind of what the next several years will look like, because it's been a while since the organization's actually completed that strategic plan. So I really just want to leave the profession within Indiana in a better place and leave the organization in good hands when I end up finishing out my term in a couple of years. And we are starting to see more and more younger managers. At one point, I was the youngest manager in the state, and luckily that's not true anymore. There's a good handful of ones younger than me. So I want to make sure they're being brought into a healthy environment with good training, good mentors as well, people they can call upon when they have an issue with a council member or a citizen or a public works issue when they've never had that background. Since some of these managers are actually starting as their first job after their MPA as the manager, without going through even a deputy seat. So some of them are really thrown in the deep end. So creating a place where they feel like they have resources that they can't get anywhere else and that they can always call upon is important to me.
I love it. It's awesome. We could talk about so many other things. I want to be mindful of your time, though. A great story, powerful story, Ben. And you've mentioned your wife, your 5-year-old son. I want to just end with work-life balance. It's the big thing I talk about. I don't believe in work-life balance in really any leadership role. I think it's a wrong picture. It's a myth. It's a fable. It's really a lie, because your life has more than two parts, more than just work and life. And
Right.
work sounds pretty defined and life sounds pretty broad. So I don't think that's fair. But what does it look like in a role that doesn't shut off? Cities don't sleep. That snowstorm you just got hit with came on the weekend. It didn't call you up and say, "Hey, sorry, we can't make 9 to 5 Tuesday." Your life, and you have community events too that you're a part of, and you're kind of, yes, there's elected officials, but you also have responsibility as the face of the administration. How do you stay healthy personally? How do you make time relationally? I know you probably don't have it all figured out and a perfect plan dialed in, but maybe share with us some of the struggles of that and some of the things you've learned now in the seat for a handful of years.
So I agree. Work-life balance is a misnomer and not a reality, not realistic, but um, balancing multiple areas of life is something that I strive for. But to me, that's not equal time, right? It's not like everybody gets exactly a balance of time. It's more of making sure you're putting in quality time and planning around when you can do things. So I try to be very intentional with my planning with my family, so that I know, we are going to connect on a true family level when I'm around. I'm going to make sure that, with my wife, that I'm showing affection. With my son, I'm showing affection. When I get home from work, I'm going to sit in my car for 5 to 10 minutes and I'm going to decompress from my day, disconnect. I know my phone's probably going to go off a few more times after I go inside, but I want to be as fresh for them as I can when I do get home to them, so that I'm not, bringing that high level work stress intensity into my home life. My wife really understands that the profession is demanding, so she'll understand that if I need to step out of the room to make a call and stuff, that um, how we manage that and take care of that. I think self care is another item that's difficult because I feel like, yeah, the community that I serve, and then I do have my wife and son, then family and friends, and then sometimes it's easier. It's easy for all of us, and I think managers particularly, to put ourselves very last on the tier, and that's where I find the most challenge in doing that. So even uh, if I can get some thoughts out at the end of the day, journaling, stuff like that. But for me, it's normally just go for a walk, even if it's after my son's in bed, even when it's -10 out, like it is with the wind chill right now. I try to go for a walk. If I can get in nature, that really, for me, refreshes me. But um, I just think you have to be intentional with your time. Like I said, it's not time's not going to be balanced. So it's about intention and quality. And that goes for extended family, friends, and things too. You prioritize things appropriately and you set intention.
You basically nailed the keynote I'm about to give in all the places coming up. It's about intention, right? That is the word. How do you live in the tension of municipal life and leadership with radical intention? And I think that's the thing. I love servant leader. I love the principles of servant leadership. The problem is it can become people pleasing, where you try to make everyone happy, and you become then the last thing. And the way to have the way to lose impact as a leader is to not take care of yourself, because a car without fuel in the tank goes nowhere. And so I know it's always hard. You feel selfish. You feel right. Oh, I can't, I gotta serve everyone else. But I just encourage leaders, serve yourself. Make sure you have fuel in the tank so that you can pour out, have something in the cup. You don't want to pour out air. That doesn't feed anybody. So,
absolutely.
Good stuff, Ben. What a story. Some amazing insights. Anything else as we wrap?
I really appreciate the time. I appreciate kind of the mission that you're on with this podcast, and kind of sharing from our world a little bit, and even, local government. People forget what local government truly is, right? Local government at its core is really neighbors helping neighbors. It's the closest to the people you can be. And people lose sight of that in today's day and age. We're really just a group of neighbors helping neighbors. Your elected officials are your neighbors that you've elected. You don't always have to get along, but that return to civility, I think, when you frame it that way and you can humanize it, bring it back to humanity, I think that's where we need to go.
Such a great point. Local government is, I think, it's such an incredible mission, because like you just said, it is the people. It is the work of communities. It's really humanity at what I hope could be its best and brightest level, right? Like you say, neighbors serving one another, making their places thrive and flourish. Thank you, Ben, for sharing your life, your story, your leadership journey, your insights. Great stuff. Looking forward to being in touch.
Thanks, Seth.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast are part of something bigger, a movement to remind us where government truly lives. No, not in Washington, D.C., but right here at home, where we live, where we work, and where we play. Because it's in our cities, our counties, and our communities that the real work of democracy happens. And when local government thrives, people thrive. If this conversation inspired you, take a small step that makes a big difference. Subscribe to the podcast, share the episode, and follow along on social media. Every click helps amplify the stories that build pride, purpose, and belonging in local government. To learn more about the Halting Winter Project and how you can be part of the work that builds belonging, visit HaltingWinter.com. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and until next time, this has been the Halting Winter Podcast.